Good afternoon, everyone. This is Steve Nelson of the National Weather Service with a weekly weather briefing. This is for June 4th. Hope everyone's doing well. Let's get started. The main highlights for today are about Tropical Depression Cristobal. It's forecast to become a tropical storm sometime Friday, probably Friday afternoon, and move north into the northern Gulf Coast late this weekend, probably Sunday, could even be Monday. And right now it looks like as long as the forecast track and intensity hold, the impacts to Georgia should be limited to heavy rain. Maybe Sunday through Tuesday. It could go on into the week, which we'll talk about later. And we're moderately confident that this forecast will hold. We've seen a lot of tropical systems the last several years, and some are more confident than others. There's a lot of uncertainty in tracks with some storms. This one seems to be pretty confident as far as all things go. It's not a perfect forecast by any means, but we're moderately confident that this forecast for limited impacts in Georgia is going to hold. So we'll show a little bit more about that in the next slides. We could see isolated strong storms this afternoon and tonight. The SPC has a little bit of a marginal risk for strong to severe storms in far north parts of Georgia today and tonight. But we're kind of in an active warm pattern with higher chances of rain than we've seen the last few days over the next 7 days. So we could see a pattern where we see isolated strong storms and more scattered thunderstorms in the afternoon and evening, especially the rest of the week and into next week. No drought or very wet conditions are being observed right now, which is kind of in between, which is nice. So off to the current conditions. This was as of noon today. You can already see some showers forming in middle Georgia. They also will expand a little bit. Not expecting anything super widespread today, but no lightning as of yet, but wouldn't be surprised, of course, to see thunderstorms developing. And the main story is Tropical Depression Cristobal. This is the Yucatan. You can see the faint blue outline on these slides. If you're watching the recording or if you have access to the PowerPoint, that should animate. If not, the PDF, you're just seeing the single slide. But those pulses, those lightning strokes are from the GOES lightning mapping satellite image, and it's detecting, convection and thunderstorms, and mainly in the mountain areas of the Yucatan. It's always hard for tropical systems to fully develop near this area with the mountains so close to the warm Gulf of Mexico waters. On the next slide, you can kind of see this was an image taken at noon, and it's hard to tell the rotation, but if I step backward an hour and then kind of cycle back and through here, you can kind of get a sense that there is a large rotation. Some people refer to this as a gyre, which is just another fancy name for rotation. It's just on a larger scale. And within that, we kind of expect this depression to become a tropical storm. So we'll keep watching it. This is the official forecast from the Hurricane Center as of 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 Central. So we have maximum sustained winds at 35 miles per hour. It's kind of drifting around. It's actually moving east-southeast. It's inland. Over Central America, far southern Mexico. Forecast to move north slowly, and even tomorrow still a depression. Not expecting it to forecast to become a tropical storm until it kind of reaches the water, or at least the coastal areas, and staying a storm. So those S's on the map refer to it as a tropical storm. Not seeing any indication that this will be a hurricane. That can change. This is the time of year we're in hurricane season. It started June 1st, and the Gulf of Mexico temperatures are above normal for this time of year. I want to point that out. But the conditions overall are not favorable for any kind of major hurricane or anything like that to develop. But we'll keep watching the forecast, like I mentioned earlier, is for moving towards Louisiana coast, give or take anywhere in that mid-south region, north-central Gulf Coast region is under the gun. That cone of uncertainty that we refer to is just describes the track again, just a reminder. It doesn't describe where impacts are. It just tells where the center of the storm could make landfall. And you can get impacts well outside of that. And in fact, that's what we're going to talk about next is the rainfall, actually after this slide here, that just to reiterate, the tropical storm wind conditions are not really expected anywhere near Georgia in the next 5 days. But as far as rainfall, this is a 7-day map. One is on the right, the larger scale. You can see the oranges and the reds and the purples. Those are 2 to 4 inches. Those brighter colors, the higher rain, are going to be over Florida and Louisiana in the next 7 days, maybe in the Mississippi River Valley area. That's 4 to 5, 7 inches plus. Those could drift up, especially if, this kind of system has a lot of moisture with it. Wouldn't be surprised if the storm totals go up in those areas over the next few days. When you zoom in more into Georgia, though, we're kind of seeing a signs that we could be in a pattern with drier conditions moving in from the east that may help us. So you see some lighter amounts, even possibly less than an inch of rain in a good chunk of middle Georgia and east central Georgia. But that's the forecast. It kind of looks similar to this time yesterday. We do have a little bit more over North Georgia, and I'll share more about that later. That's probably more towards next week, Wednesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Wednesday that is, with an interaction with a cold front possibly coming towards us. But that's a ways off, and a little bit less certainty on that. But the pattern would be really favorable for a moisture plume from the remnants of Cristobal if that's indeed where it tracks. So I'll show more about that here in a little bit. This is breaking down the rainfall in days 4 and 5, which would be Monday and Tuesday, I believe. Now, I think this is Sunday. I'm sorry. Sunday, Monday is day 4 and 5. Rainfall is mainly confined to south and west Georgia. Those blue colors are around an inch. Nothing too heavy, at least through Monday. But it's when you add it up over those, the combined time is when we're seeing those 2 to 3 inch amounts and higher. And the 1 to 2 inches in far north Georgia, that's where we're interacting with possibly a front, the terrain. The moisture plume would coming from the remnants of Cristobal will be strong, fairly strong southerly flow aloft, bringing deep moisture in. 5-day weather outlook. So the good news here is mainly they're only worried about Cristobal. The Hurricane Center is not monitoring any other tropical development in the next 5 days, so good news there. And here's kind of the outlook for besides Cristobal. We're just in a pattern where we're going to be seeing just warm, wet, kind of almost tropical like conditions with a little more clouds, a little bit more rainfall. So we're jumping ahead to Saturday. So this is Saturday on the screen. Chances of rain, 30, 40%. The Cristobal is probably down there in the Gulf of Mexico, if you can kind of see the lines of pressure. It's actually to the south. There's a weak stationary front, not much moisture or lift associated with that, so we're not pegging a lot of rainfall with that, so that's good. High pressure kind of building in from the Great Lakes states, and Cristobal on this map on Sunday is forecast to be south of Louisiana. You get to Tuesday. I've kind of skipped Monday there, apologize, but on Tuesday, Monday and Tuesday, the system will be lifting into Louisiana and then Arkansas, so it's not a fast moving, so we could see potentially heavy rain. That's why I mentioned would not be surprised to see the rainfall amounts to the west, Mississippi, that whole area, Arkansas, Louisiana, even parts of Alabama. Those storm total rainfalls go up, the forecast for rainfall to the west. Georgia, it's a little more uncertain. We could be with this dry high pressure to the east, kind of moseying in. Some drier air, some subsidence, just perhaps enough to knock down the rainfall amounts. And it's not until we get to Wednesday when the remnants of Cristobal move into the Midwest, Illinois, Indiana, according to this forecast. We're in that pattern where you could get southerly winds and deep moisture coming streaming back into the state ahead of a cold front. That's kind of like maybe a Pacific cold front, some people might say. Warmer air, we always usually get moisture ahead of these fronts anyway and lift, so we'll have to watch that for the period sometime next week. I don't have the map for Thursday, but that Wednesday pattern and beyond Wednesday, Thursday could be very wet and potentially heavy rain. So going back to today and tonight, as far as forgetting, wanted to bring you up to date and give you the latest on Cristobal, but the SPC is indicating in their outlook for this afternoon and tonight that a marginal risk of severe storms is possible in far north areas. Not expecting any widespread or organized thunderstorms at this point, but there's a potential where the storms could be, a little more flow aloft. They could extend past midnight if, that sets up just right. I've got a forecast here that's an hourly forecast starting at 1 o'clock, and if you watch the animation, you'll see the thunderstorms kind of developing all over the place. Nothing too widespread. Some in Atlanta could be there. In other parts of the state, decreasing a little bit in the evening. But if you notice in the far north and Tennessee and Alabama, they kind of linger into the late evening and after midnight hours. Here we're at midnight, and there's still storms in the north, so we'll have to watch that. I mean, you can't rule out any kind of convective system, but it just doesn't look like a real well-organized setup. Nothing from our high-res models that we look at. We have several we can look at that are indicating a major, kind of convective system moving in after midnight. Just want to share that there is an isolated, chance of isolated strong or severe storms in the far north after midnight, not just in the afternoon and evening. 7-day outlook, kind of reiterating the tropical pattern with mild temperatures, especially at night, very warm temperatures, upper 80s in the daytime, and lows around 70, even low 70s in some areas. I just happen to pick Athens and Macon. Pretty uniform, not much difference no matter where you go in the state in north and central Georgia. You can kind of see the probabilities there. They don't go down too much. If anything, actually, as Cristobal gets a little closer Sunday and Monday, our chances of rain go down a little bit. That could be from that high pressure to the east I shared earlier. Then we get back in that moist pattern ahead of a front Tuesday, Wednesday, with the remnants of Cristobal lifting north. That could actually enhance our rainfall. So maybe counterintuitive, but that's the way we're used to looking at things as meteorologists, so not too surprising. If you want to look at your specific forecast, I definitely recommend weather.gov. Just go there and type in a zip code or a city-state. You'll always get the latest forecast for your specific area. Hydrologic drought conditions. This is looking good. I almost had to look at this map of Georgia a few times to make sure it was working right. There's only just a little bit of D0, which is abnormally dry conditions in far south Georgia, and then I went ahead and looked at the entire southeast region just to make sure that we're not seeing anything near us. So that's good news. I mean, sometimes when you see all white, that means we're very wet, but we do know for the fact that we've not seen any very heavy rainfall in the last month or so either. So we're kind of in between. It's just not too wet, not too dry. I guess you can't complain on that front. So we'll hope this continues. If anything, we might get into a wet pattern here for the next 7 to 10 days, but we'll watch it after that. So to summarize again, this is the same slide that I shared at the beginning. Tropical Depression Cristobal is forecast to become a tropical storm late Friday. Move north into the northern Gulf Coast late this weekend towards Monday. As long as the track and intensity hold, we're thinking that the impact should be limited in Georgia to some heavy rain possible, and that may be just portions of the state, not really widespread over all of north and central Georgia. So good news. That could be anytime after Sunday, but it really, I put through Tuesday, that could really even be all the way through Thursday with the remnants of Cristobal and the moisture plume associated with it kind of feeding ahead of that cold front. But that's still a ways out. We'll watch that. And we're moderately confident about this forecast. There's many tropical storms we watch, and this one seems to have a decent amount of confidence with it that the track is going to hold, but don't hold me to it. Maybe tomorrow this time it'll change. But my experience, this seems somewhat certain now that this forecast for less impacts in Georgia is going to maintain itself. We could see isolated strong to severe storms this afternoon and tonight, especially in the far north parts of Georgia. And that active pattern, we're going to see scattered afternoon and evening thunderstorms really in the next 7 days, even in that sort of pseudo-dry pattern on that I mentioned this weekend on Sunday and Monday. So just be prepared for that. A little bit more thunderstorms than maybe we've seen the last week. And if you do get a thunderstorm, the main impacts will be just the lightning and brief heavy rain and some gusty winds, possibly small hail, especially the stuff coming in late tonight in the far north. No drought or very wet conditions observed, and I think that's it. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the briefing, and you guys have a great weekend.